of James Pudney, SBL 11.37-1-71, for property located at 101 Madison Ave for an area variance to construct an 8x8 roof over a 6x6 deck parentheses. He's seeking an 8-foot relief. The above application is open for inspection at the Town of Sullivan office building during regular business hours. Persons wishing to appear at such a hearing may do so by person, attorney, or other representative. James, you're here. Oh, maybe I should have done the other one first. We'll move on to the other one and see if he gets here in a few minutes. A public hearing before the ZBA of the Town of Sullivan will be held on Thursday, August 11th at 7 o'clock to consider the application of Chitnanger Solar LLC SPL 17.1-6 for property located at 8276 Lakeport Road for an area variance to allow ground-mounted solar system within 1,000 feet of wetlands as per the current zoning law of Town of Sullivan. The above application is open for inspection at the Town of Sullivan office building during regular business hours. Persons wishing to appear at such a hearing may do so by person, attorney, or other representative. So is there a representative from Chitnanger Solar that?
Yes.
Okay.
I apologize, I didn't realize we weren't first, I would have put that up again. Sorry about that. Travis Mitchell with Environmental Design Partnership, engineer for Nexium, here with Liza Sheps with Nexium, and John Ahern, in terms of Couch White, also representing Nexium. This is the first time we've been before your board, so I think it'd be helpful just for Liza to give a quick background on Nexium, and then I'll get into some of the project details.
So Nexium was founded in 2007 by 2 Army veterans based out of Boston, Massachusetts. We have since grown to have a nationwide presence, having solar and storage projects in 13 states and growing. In New York State, we became very active about 7 years ago and have remained so. Now we have 32 projects currently installed and operating, with another 28 projects in different stages of construction right now. We are also the largest community solar provider in the state, owning and operating about 35% of installed community solar projects. What makes Nexium very different and is an important distinction between Nexium and other solar developers is that we design, build, own, and operate the facilities for the lifetime of the project. It is not our business model to design, permit, or construct a project and sell it, nor is it our business model to get an interconnection agreement in place and then sell that. So we have our own in-house construction management group, asset management group, and operations and maintenance group. And then this just outlines what community solar is and how it works. Nexium connects the project to the existing distribution grid, not transmission. Distribution, which means the energy is dispersed locally. Local residents remain with their current electrical provider, but also subscribe to a Nexium project. Nexium then passes along those energy credits, which can be applied to the residents' electricity bill, resulting in about 10% yearly or annual reduction in their electrical costs. So that's community solar and Nexium. Go ahead.
Sure. So this is the project that we're before you with. It's located in 278 Lakeport Road. It's a 3.1 megawatt AC solar project, ground mounted. This is a single axis tracker system. So this is a typical example of a single axis tracker. The arrays are orientated in a north-south direction, and the panels rotate very slowly throughout the day, facing obviously east in the morning and then slowly rotating to the west in the afternoon. No battery storage proposed. The fenced area, and I'll show you a footprint momentarily, is about 16 acres within the fence. Of course, with this type of project for long-term impact, there'll be or is a decommissioning plan provided, and of course minimal minimal traffic impact, minimal noise. So this is Town Sullivan zoning map, we're within the agricultural district, property roughly here in the overall town. This is the 272 acre parcel. Solar, community solar, yes, go ahead.
What is the current use of that property right now?
Yep, so I will, if you give me just a second, I'll have an aerial of it, easier to describe. Just a closer view on Google Earth of the property, you can still see the outline of 272 acres, and you can start to see the footprint of where we're proposing the solar project. And a closer up view here, again, the property, solar project here. These are hay fields out in this area. I don't know how active they are, if they're currently being hayed, but they are cleared. And at least at one time were being used for hay. This is, let's see, Smith Ridge is here. If you've got your orientation right, Lakeport, Smith Ridge here. So just, again, a little closer view. You've got the black and whites in front of you, but it's a little bit easier to see it here and just point out the highlights. Again, property boundary here in green. There's a mobile home park here to the north, Lakeport Road, Smith Ridge Road. So we'll have initially a 20-foot wide access road that comes in through the interconnection poles with National Grid, and that eventually tapers down to a 12-foot road by the time you get to the end, and a 12-foot road right here. It's gravel access road. The entire parcel is surrounded by a fence. We typically like to use an ag style fence, wooden posts, 4x4 wire mesh on them. It fit in a little bit better with the character typically. So the utility connection you can start to see here. A central electrical equipment located here that's about 1,000 feet off of Lakeport Road. You can see the panels, obviously blue, oriented north-south. This is a relatively good location, given the distance that we're able to push this off of Lakeport Road. It's about 500 feet to the edge of the panels from Lakeport. The zoning code requires a minimum of 250. I've got those outlined here. We're 500 feet back from the front, 410 from the side, and 350 from the rear.
You might have it on a later slide. Whereabout is the wetland that we're looking at?
So, good question. Let me jump ahead a couple of slides, and then I'll come back to this one if you'd like. So, I'm going to jump ahead. So, one more point here. When we started this project in early 2001, we were working with the town's 2017 solar ordinance, and obviously in late 2021, December, that ordinance got updated to require this 1,000-foot separation from wetlands, which is what puts us here tonight. So we thought we had what would be a good setting of the project here. So what I've overlaid here, and I'm going to come back to that slide to more fully answer your question, but what I've overlaid here, Town of Sullivan roughly in red, and those are Army Corps mapped wetlands. If we then take a 1,000-foot setback to those wetlands, the entire, everything north of Chittenango basically is covered with that 1,000-foot setback. So it really encumbers, as I said, everything north of Chittenango.
You're saying all the white is within 1,000 feet?
Yeah, so this is mapped Army Corps wetlands here, not even DEC. These are Army Corps wetlands. And then if we take each of these wetlands and offset them by the 1,000-foot buffer, we end up with that. Which is why we're here. So, but to more fully answer your question, so Army Corps wetlands are already mapped out, right? We knew that going in, that there was an Army Corps wetland. You can see it here, this channel. And then there are some other Army Corps wetlands, and you can see it by about the vegetation which cuts through roughly in here and here. When we did our on-site, site-specific delineation, and you can see it in the black and whites that you've got, where we actually, this whole area here, you can see the outline underneath, would be considered Army Corps, not DEC, but Army Corps wetlands. So the interesting thing about Army Corps wetlands is the Army Corps does not consider a solar project such as this as disturbance. So the only portion of it that would be considered disturbance is where the access road nips a piece of it right here. The panels themselves and the posts, the driven posts and the fence would not consider disturbance. In fact, what we find is oftentimes in a farm field like this where there's wetland, it's a good place to put solar. It's not prime farmland, it's wet, and it gives the farmer some added annual income so that he can then farm other pieces. Not saying that's necessarily the case here, but that's oftentimes what we find. And then if you jump to this map, I didn't have time to overlay it, but I'd be willing to bet the few scattered pieces that aren't within that 1,000-foot buffer are prime farmlands. So it really puts a burden on trying to develop a project. Questions before I move on to kind of process and where we're at with the planning board?
If I may just make one clarification about this specific aerial. You can see that the delineated wetland within the area of the project, that wetland also continues to the south, because the obvious thing is why don't we push this project south? That continues, it just wasn't in our site-specific delineated boundary that we were looking at, but the other wetland maps show that it is.
So what I was saying is right now our wetland delineation was focused on the area of the project, which is up in here. And as she said, obvious question, why don't you just push it further south where it doesn't show on my map? And the answer is there are wetlands as you push south, and a full delineation would likely show that we don't have the room for it south either. And in any case, it is covered by the 1,000-foot setback. So, approval process requires site plan review and special use permit with the planning board. We had some initial submittal back in May, met with the planning board in June, July, and then just last week in August, working toward the planning board initiating secret coordinated review. So the planning board determined that they would like to meet the agency. They initiated that process, started coordinated review, but knowing that the project cannot be approved unless and until we receive variance from the zoning board. So that's where we stand right now. We've got initial review from Barton and Judas, which we addressed the comments sufficiently to initiate coordinated review, and ask that we come before your board to talk about the project before we advance it further to the planning board. Any other questions or anything I missed, John?
I submitted my letter was dated in June that Travis put in with the application. I kind of went through the 4-part test, the 5-part test, excuse me. The area variance, I don't know if anybody wants to go over any of that. I'm sure everyone likes it. But if you have questions or you want me to talk about it, let me know. I'm more than happy to do it.
Okay. Yeah, we're familiar with the 5 questions, and I think we can handle them, but if we have any questions, you're available.
Has the Army Corps of Engineers began a review?
Yeah, good question. So the short answer is not yet. So typically what happens in these projects is we'll go out and do a delineation, advance it through planning. Any approvals would be conditioned on an Army Corps permit. We're comfortable enough with this. We've done enough of these that we know that they will approve this. And so it would be a pre-construction notification to the Army Corps, and that's the point that they'll come back and they'll verify the wetlands and they'll issue the permit in that way. The other way to do it you may be referring to is they ask them for a specific JD, but it takes so long because they're so busy to get that out of them that we essentially proceed at our own risk for some until we apply for the PCN. But again, we've done enough of these. We know what we need.
Thank you. Rich, we can't really make a decision. We're waiting for the Army Corps. Really, that's what we should.
The main thing is the seeker process. Okay. So the zoning board can't make a decision on the variance until a determination of significance is made on the seeker component. It is a coordinated review. The planning board declared itself lead agency. They did circulate lead agency notices to all the relevant, involved, and interested agencies. I believe that letter just went out this week, or last week, because, planning board meeting was last week, so. Those entities have 30 days to respond before the planning board can make any determination of significance, so, you know, it could be just, you know, a month and a half before, you know, the planning board's even in a position to move forward with seeker, so.
I have a couple questions. What is the life expectancy of this project?
So, the project is detailed to have 25 years with extensions up to 40 years total.
So you're leasing this property, not purchasing it, okay?
Okay. 25 to 40 years. How about decommissioning costs? What allowances are made for that?
So
We don't want an abandoned solar farm field.
Oh, absolutely. That's part of our process. We have a decommissioning plan, and in most towns, we do a surety bond. What's standard for NYSERDA guidelines is $30,000 per megawatt. You can also get into details of recycling and those different features, but the rule of thumb is $30,000 per megawatt.
And this is what, a 3.1, what was it?
3.1 megawatt project, and then that I know the town code has a 150% markup on that, and then also we, for NYSERDA guideline, do typically a 2% annual.
Escalation,
Yes,
30,000 per megawatt, so that'd be $100,000 roughly in
Right.
round numbers. To take care of that mess,
Well,
it could potentially be left behind.
Unless we're providing energy.
right, and that's
Well,
part of
hey,
the approval process with the planning.
don't
board.
misunderstand me, folks, I'm not against solar energy.
Mhm.
I just wanna make sure that our town is
Oh, absolutely.
protected.
Through the planning board process, the planning board, B&L will look at the estimate for the decommissioning, I'm sure they'll have comments as well. And that's also part of the town buffer they built in with that 150%, so you get that extra 50% as just.
Okay. And what is the use of that land currently?
It's just vacant, it hasn't had a crop on it in quite a few years.
Okay, so it's vacant land
It's been,
and borderline wetland.
Yeah,
it has been used for hay in the past.
so when the farmer planted it, he never harvested it, that'll tell you something.
Okay. Okay.
When did you guys originally start the lease? You said it predated the law, the updated the law, right?
We had an executed site control agreement, so the option lease agreement with the landowner in March of 2021.
I thought you said you started this in 2017.
No, sorry, I was referring to when we started in 2021, we were working under the guidelines of the 2017 solar ordinance of the town.
Of which we were fully compliant with all the criteria presented in that. And then after the March site control agreement, we then proceeded with the due diligence test. We already had screened the property very thoroughly before that, but I mean, by due diligence, I mean title, going through the process with the interconnection process with the utility, which is always the critical path that takes, in this case, it took 10 months to get the full Caesar study from the utility, and then there was actually back and forth after that. So we had the finalized interconnection agreement that we submitted in May of last year, completed in May of this year. So that was the lead time between site control agreement and coming before the planning board and submitting to the zoning board.
I'm just gonna get sidetracked for a minute. Jerry, I don't know if you have Putney's number, I don't know if, it might help if they were here for the other hearing. Sorry
We're
about
gonna end up tabling that until next month. We'll have it.
if they're not here, right, so if they can get here in the next,
Can we review, have a copy to review the disposition plan? And can we have a materials list of what the material components are? of the solar
Decommissioning
array?
plan?
Yeah.
Is that, yeah.
That's a disposition, so.
Yes, that is something that will be submitted to the planning board, where this does require an area variance. We had the town engineer, review everything we've submitted thus far, and will be, submitting a decommissioning plan and operations and maintenance plan and that type of thing. So it hasn't been submitted yet, but we can provide that.
So when that comes in, Rich and Terry would like to, I'd like to see at least, for what we have to do. I don't think I'm the only one.
Where are your panels made?
So, that's a tricky question. We source them from a few different places. Typically at this stage in the process, we can, confirm type of panel, but not, exact sourcing of panels. So we use the PV panels, rather than thin film because of the chemical makeup of them. But, there's a few different, locations where we source them from, and, the past year with supply chain issues, tariffs imposed, and everything like that, it's been turbulent to, navigate.
It's not in the United States, then.
Some are,
Wherever they can get them at this point,
Right.
it's so difficult to get anything.
some are United States, but then if you follow the full supply chain, some of those pieces of the United States
Some of
panels
the
are from,
components.
exactly, so,
It's designed in the United States, but manufactured in Indonesia.
Or China.
some of which Canada, some of which Korea.
When was the company started, Nexamp?
When did Nexamp start? 2007 in Boston.
Where's the nearest Nexamp?
Thank you.
location to where we are?
Yeah, yeah, we have two in, yeah, we have two co-located projects. in Lennox.
So you guys have the one on Canal Street outside of
I
town?
believe it's
Ford
on
Street?
BB
Bridge Road.
Street. BB,
BB
yeah,
Bridge.
Bridge Road.
Okay.
you have BB Bridge?
And you said you had two over there?
Well, there are two co-located projects, meaning,
Two projects right next to you.
right,
So you guys didn't do the other two that they have in Lennox that are by Ford Street?
I don't believe so.
Are
Did
you
you
trying to
guys
do
do
the
the
six,
one-
are you trying to do the 600-acre one there?
No,
Down there?
so community solar projects are up to 5 megawatts AC. That's Nexamp's bread and butter, that's what the majority of our projects are, is up to 5 megawatts AC. We do have a small utility scale division, but nothing local to here at all. The transmission is too congested in this area to viable.
Did you guys do the project over on Island Road in Cicero?
I'd have to look into that. Yeah.
You could just look at a list of your local projects to look for if they want to do site visits or something. That would be good.
Yeah, with that said, each project goes through its own approval process and has input from that locality, and has different, I know the two Owlville Creek projects, that's the name of the two co-located projects on BB Bridge Road. That is a different type of panel, or racking, I'm sorry. So that, I believe, is fixed tilt panels, and what that means is these are the ones standard that you see on the side of highways and everything like that. They run east-west, and the panel faces stationary, facing south. The ones we have proposed for this project run in lines from north to south, with the panel face rotating throughout the day to track the sun. So it is a little tricky if you're going to look at nearby projects that were designed, built, and everything with different criteria, different requests, different sites.
Yeah, I think to Liza's point, that's, different towns cite things differently, they have different codes, different requirements. Some places are much more lenient, like, yeah, just put it up.
Okay, I mean, BB Bridge is a very back road that like 10 people drive on
Right,
for 2
Yeah.
hours.
It
Lake
more-
Portland's-
right, and more, populated areas, siting is more done, more screening, more planting, things like that, chasing.
Is, I want to understand the surety bond process. Are those fully funded upfront so that if Nexamp were to go bankrupt, as you started to have to actually do decommission, if decommissioning ends up being far more expensive than anticipated and the company folds and the panels in the town of Sullivan still have 10 years left on them, are those surety bonds fully funded upfront that they would have maturity at the 25-year mark or 40-year mark?
My recollection is that town code requires it to be a cash surety, so it would be
Fully funded upfront?
correct. But I'm sure as your attorney could, inform you, if any development in the town, if it becomes a hazard to public health or safety, or becomes dilapidated, the town has recourse to go in and fix and take property.
Well, they have an ability to come in and take property, and it's not the town that does it, it's the county. The problem is, number one, if the land is leased and they're taking farmland from a farmer that has hundreds of thousands of dollars of what California's calling toxic materials, there's no place that you can take it, then the town, or the county rather, would have a 6-figure problem that they have to solve. So that's why, like for me, it matters significantly whether or not the funds for the decommissioning are adequate. And from what I've heard in the industry, 30,000, and I know you said they have 150% for the town, 30,000 isn't anywhere close to what they're anticipating the cost to be per megawatt.
So that $30,000, I can speak to that, that's from NYSERDA guidelines, so we follow that. You
I
do
know.
see a lot of, no, but I wanna.
I'm in a position where I don't really trust NYSERDA.
Right.
Their estimates.
Okay.
I know what they're doing.
They
with-
are the governing board for this.
they're the state
With that
governing
said, a lot of
Our state's a mess.
decommissioning plans that are submitted and approved by localities have different, so they start off with the $30,000 per megawatt, and then they also go through the process with the town engineer and everything, factoring in recycling and salvage value and everything like that. To make it a more streamlined process, what I typically do is I don't get into that mess of salvage value, recycling, and all that. Not to say that Nexamp doesn't do that. We have, to be in line with our character of the company and everything, we do have a 100% recycling standpoint by 2023, so we're really, really close to doing that now, and then the last 40 years from now. So I understand the concern. We do fulfill all the requirements that's cited for that. Cash bonds up front is very rare for a town to do.
And I will say this decommissioning, the security, all that stuff will be reviewed by the planning board, and that's
Right.
the code in their purview, so they're gonna look at it, planning board engineers are gonna look at it. I believe the town attorney's office even looks at it in this county. So it's not something that's like where we just provide a number and the planning board says, okay, it is verified, looked at by the.
Is there anybody here to speak for or against this application? If so, please stand and state your name.
Arthur Lilia, Waterbury Road.
Want to make any further comments, or?
I do.
All right, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, I stopped in last week and reviewed the submittals and all of the Nexamp maps provided with the application, and I do have a few comments here. This applicant wants approval to place most of the 16-acre footprint directly onto the only wetlands on that 273-acre site. These wetlands occupy less than 10 acres. I was alarmed that no aspect of this project should be allowed to occupy any part of our town's precious wetlands. They're protected many times by our code enforcement officer, who is very good about following up and bird dogging with business owners who get a little too close to wetlands, and you're a wonderful resource, Larry, and we appreciate you so much. We all know that wetlands, though, they're a small part of the site, but they're environmentally sensitive sites and vitally important to the local flora and fauna, especially as they lead into the creek here going by. it's unconscionable that you would place this onto the wetlands themselves. Wetlands are considered the most biologically diverse of all ecosystems, serving as a home to a wide range of animal and plant species. I ask that your decision serve to protect one of our town's few and precious wetland areas and give Larry something to be able to follow up on. Number one, the proposal does not mention any of the wetland site's flora or fauna, or any knowledge of the site's special characteristics. No studies were done, no studies are planned from what I can tell. The applicant supports their project by simply stating this project is important to New York State energy goals, and it may be, and the Army Corps of Engineers has approved wetlands encroachment in other areas, so they ask, why not here too? We don't have a lot of wetlands in this town, and they're vitally important. Number two, the proposal even managed to place part of its access road through the wetland area too. There's no mention of this road's impact on the wetlands either. And there's no mention of the project's road's impact on the site's flora and fauna again. Number three, the proposal does not specify what is the proposed material and their finishes going into the ground on those support posts. Treated lumber should have no place anywhere close to a wetland, and I verified that with the chairman of the board of our nearby Great Swamp Conservancy, Mike Patney. We don't know if the support post materials and finishes may deliver ongoing damages to the ground, let alone the wetlands, but we gotta get this thing away from the wetlands. The proposal mentions project drainage, but doesn't specify any details, noting that placement of the footprint is intended to minimize their drainage costs. Great. But the proposal fails to mention any potential impacts of that drainage on the creek and on the wetlands and on the flora and fauna that depend on this area. Number five, the proposal fails to mention any ongoing maintenance activities, whether cleaning agents, herbicides, or manual landscaping. Now, herbicides usually have strong label restrictions against usage near wetlands. You're going to take everything out in that wetland using those. As do many industrial cleaning agents. Well, finally, compromise. In speaking with the chairman of the board of the Great Swamp Conservancy, he asked me to pass along that please come up with something between 500 feet and 1,000, but do not let this project get closer than 500 feet to a wetland. It'll take everything out. Please remember they have 273 acres available for a 16-acre footprint. We never did hear how much of this footprint is available with a 500-foot clearance. Thank you very much, Art Lilio, Waterbury Road.
Thank you.
Would you like copies?
Yes.
Jerry? No. One for you.
Can you point out again where the wetland is on this map?
So, you can see, so it shows up pretty clearly in your black and white, but on this view, you've got it right here at the
Right.
corner of the entrance road. You can follow that. See the white line as it comes through?
Yeah.
So it's this shaded color of it here.
What are the soils there, do you know?
So it's, I believe they're all heavy soils. It would be outlined in the secret document. I have to double check.
Right.
It's really drained heavy soils.
So I had asked earlier, and I asked two questions, and because I asked two questions, the first one didn't get answered. But the question about getting a materials list, can you get a materials list as well?
On materials list, can you just narrow that down towards
Like, what are the chemical components, the metal components that are actually used in constructing?
like galvanized steel, is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so,
you're talking about the panel itself, the
Yeah.
glass, like what do they?
Like material data sheet, huh?
Thank you, material data.
Yes, I can provide, material, data sheets for, two of our standard, panels of this type, the PV panels, which I think you'll be, happy with the contents of. They're not hazardous, not soluble, and very redundantly, constrained within the.
What is the maintenance, and if any cleaning, what does that look like?
Cleaning like of the panels?
Yeah, is there any cleaning process for the panels?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So we have our own asset management, operations and maintenance group in our headquarters in Boston. We remote monitor every single project 24/7. If there's any issue with one panel within the whole array, we are aware of it in real time. As part of our submission to the planning board, we will be submitting an operations and maintenance plan to be approved. Which outlines the annual maintenance, and everything that's involved. Where this is on Army Corps wetlands, we follow the Army Corps specific requirements. What's standard for, our projects is to, mow a few times throughout the year. These solar panels actually, do not require any real cleaning, no herbicides, no pesticides, none of that is used on any of our sites, ever. Not just in special cases, ever, that's not something we do. Especially where these are, single axis panels, that the panels rotate throughout the day, you don't run into any situation that you might on fixed tilt panels where snow or rain or anything like that gets stuck on the panel face and needs to be brushed off. And also those different weather situations are factored into our optimization calculation throughout the year. So we're not going in and brushing this off or cleaning it off every rainstorm or snowstorm, anything like that. Does that answer the question? I know it's a high level answer at this point, but I say that because I don't want to contradict anything that's going to be very thoroughly outlined per the town's standard for in the planning board, submission.
Have you guys had any of your locations have to have, panel replacement? If you've been in operation since 2007, and if so, what's been done with the outgoing panels?
Yes, so this is something we have had some panels that have, fractured or something like that. With that said, I mean, the face cover of it has fractured, not the entire panel. To break through a panel would be really difficult. And so with that said, we've replaced the panel, and this is what we're working towards, a 100% recycling process. But we have recycled panels when possible.
So when you say that you've recycled them, do you mean that you've retooled them in-house and then redeployed them, or you've taken them to a facility that does recycling of some of the materials that they're comprised of?
Right, a facility with recycling of materials, and we work with the manufacturer.
Have you had any discussions with Madison County Solid Waste about their capacity or inability to take the types of materials that these panels are comprised of?
I have not had conversations with Madison County, but I don't know if that would come into play. We don't use any landfills or anything like that. In fact,
I know Madison County doesn't let refuse leave the county. I'm not sure if that includes recycling materials, but we have a county operated landfill, and no refuse is supposed to be trucked to any other landfills other than Madison County, I believe. Not sure what the rule is for recycling, but I do know that the recycling program has gone from being a revenue generator to the county to being $1 million
Expense.
flush in the last like 3 years. So depending on what the materials are.
well, that wouldn't be our practice to go there with any materials anyway, but yes. Nexamp has gotten a really good reputation because we work with the localities who want to find a solution that's reasonable but that makes all parties happy. And we really stand by what we say. We're in process of having a fully electric fleet. We're in process of having this fully recyclable materials, and we're very picky with our own sourcing of solar panels, which a lot of times is interpreted as sourcing from where. We are very picky with that. Granted, it's very difficult to source solar panels right now, especially with open terrace, especially with everything that's involved. But yeah, like I said, the materials, they're not flammable, not hazardous, nor water soluble. Grass firing is not hot enough to melt any of these materials. Certified non-hazardous materials. Cadmium telluride is found in thin film solar panels, which is why we do not use them. We use the PV panel types. And then all panels that Nexamp uses have passed several certification tests that replicate hail, acid rain, and fire conditions. And panels are secured in an aluminum frame and covered with tempered glass. So regulated as solid waste.
Can you just touch on how the panels are anchored into the ground, like footers, pads, how deep you're going, what's the material?
So it'll be a site-specific geotech report, but they're typically driven piles is the way that they're anchored. And that is the only means by which the Army Corps is not considered a disturbance. If they're driven typically an inch pile that's driven in oftentimes 10 to 15 feet deep, depending on the soil conditions there.
Yeah, so as Travis touched on, one of the reasons the Army Corps doesn't consider this to be an impact to the wetlands is that there's no, dredging, there's no trenching, digging when they install the racking for the panel system. Army Corps considers it like fencing. You're just driving a post in, and that's kind of where that small impact on Army Corps.
You sort of answered this question, and it will go against what Arts was bringing up a little bit. Why don't you make it bigger? Why don't you make it, you say your goal is 5. Why are you only at 3.1? You've basically made all the rest of that open land totally waste. Nobody's gonna farm it, nobody's gonna use it. Now you're just gonna have to go down the road and put another panel in and get more people upset. It's like when you put a panel and get the approval, why not use every acre possible? It's wasting land.
I have a very thorough answer to that. I applied to the utility. Nexamp applied to the utility National Grid at 5 megawatts AC, the maximum size for a community solar project as per NYSERDA standards and criteria. We went back and forth, and this is part of the reason why the interconnection study took so long. Not that it's longer than the standard, but this one had a reason. When we received the original interconnections full study last December, let me back up. In last June and July, when we were going back and forth with your utility, we first get a preliminary summary, at which point we then decided to pay the fee to the utility to move into the full study process. At that preliminary screening stage, everything looked great to proceed with 5 megawatts. We proceeded at a project size of 5 megawatts AC, and that was last summer. Then December 6th of 2021, we got the full interconnection study back from the utility, which cited a project downsized from 5 megawatts AC to 3.1 megawatts AC, citing flicker issues. So what flicker issue means is, as the energy, and you can tell I'm not an electrical engineer, as the energy goes down through the wires, it's not a steady stream at certain sizes. So it was downsized for that reason. We went back and forth. We did a Caesar study rerun with the utility to try to come up with technical solutions, maybe additional equipment upgrades and everything like that. utility in the past year has also had newly approved flicker screens, which our power engineering group could explain far better than I. But even with those flicker screens applied to this project, it was determined and confirmed that the project downsize was to 3.1 megawatts, not 5 megawatts.
Cause you're tapping into those main lines where the steel lines there, correct?
Yeah, the
Okay,
three-phase
this is
line.
where I don't
Wait, wait,
understand.
hold on. You're not going into the transmission lines that
We are
nearby.
going to the three-phase electrical lines as part of the DG network, not transmission lines.
They're not going to the big lines that run through there.
Okay.
Correct, you're not going to the
Right.
transmission lines.
Just
Right.
three-phase.
You're not sending power to New York City.
Absolutely not.
You're
This
just
is
going down the
local.
road.
But within the
Connected
DG
on that.
network, there's
Yeah.
two-phase line and there's three-phase line. This means all solar projects need three-phase line. And that's one of the largest criteria for project location is where you can successfully interconnect a project.
Correct.
It's a very difficult thing to do. Even once we have a site that works well for interconnection, National Grid determines our point of interconnection on site. When we originally applied to National Grid with this project, we had a point of interconnection, meaning the utility pole lines further north on the property, and they shifted it south to this location.
So you're at that location specifically because that's where National Grid has told you that's where they want it.
Right, within the area of the project. And I just want to clarify within, so EDP delineated the wetlands within, we gave them a 50 acre of the 272 or 3 acres of the property, which is where the landowner has deemed for this use. With that said, in our initial screening of the property, there's DEC, wetlands, and other further south on the property. They're not shown in that specific aerial, but as you move north on this parcel, there are wetlands as well. And there's different levels of wetlands, so we're in the Army Corps wetlands and fully compliant with all Army Corps criteria.
So in the law that they had made some changes to, and I don't know if this was a change, it says that you're supposed to develop, implement, and maintain a native vegetation to the extent practicable and pursue it. For songbirds, migratory birds, amphibians, flora, fauna, and arts point. I think a lot of people look at a project like that and they'll have their opinions that you're wrecking that area. But it seems to me you have an opportunity that you could also improve that area.
Right, and we anticipate submitting a landscaping plan as part of our full submission to the planning board. Granted, we'll have to comply with the Army Corps wetland standards, but as currently designed in the plan set, and Travis can speak to this, it calls out soil specific to the Army Corps wetland.
Sure.
The wildflower mixed within the project bounds itself and then screening along Lake Port Road here.
Can you go back to the map and kind of so it's all pointed out?
So this is the Army Corps wetland map in white, and then this is the one where I offset down by 1,000 feet. Is that what you meant?
Yep.
Oh, or is that this one? See, I can jump to it, it's the same scale. This one's easier.
I go back.
Is that ready? Yeah. Makes sense?
Yep. I just carried out another first map on the parcel.
Now,
So the new law went from no setback requirements to wetlands to 1,000 feet.
Correct. My understanding is, and I believe the building inspector, correct me if I'm wrong, is I don't believe the town has a wetland setback for any other use aside from this.
So determined by the Corps.
Well, the wetlands are. The town worked with 1,000 feet.
No, I think his point was the distance from what within wetlands.
For other uses in the town is not determined, or
Oh, I
is not
gotcha.
written in the.
Thank you. It's not in the code, everything else is by, so because the Army Corps decided to just allow it and not have a problem with it, the town decided that they were gonna adopt I would say that's what the Army Corps has for everything else.
Yeah, I mean, if you're putting up a barn, you have to call for the DEC, who enforces the New York State or the federal wetland. They'll come out, they'll measure it, and then they'll say you gotta be 100 feet away from that.
So,
But in this case, we would never have anything for a solar array, because it's not a structure.
So the Corps still does have to review and approve.
Right, I understand that.
And they have very strict, criteria that even solar has to abide by. The layout of this project as currently designed is for the reason of that criteria. There's different thresholds. We have a wetland disturbance, of
Just under
0.09 acres, which is for the access road. And so it is very regulated what we can do with Army Corps wetlands by Army Corps of Engineers. What we're saying is that we're compliant with those constraints, not that there aren't constraints. There are constraints, we are just compliant of those constraints.
Just for your reference, in the forest, in a wetland, you're allowed to go in with muck trucks and rip every tree down, and you don't need a permit from the Corps of Engineers. But to put a solar panel in, you gotta get permission.
You sure about that? I thought you could cut the trees, but you can't take the roots out.
Correct.
Okay, right, you can cut the trees, but
Cut the trees in a wetland, strip it. It's a total mess when they're done. Cause they never fill in all those ruts.
this next question really isn't relevant for what we're deciding, but it'll help me understand how everything works. Because you mentioned that through community energy, you can get a 10% savings. Does community energy charge you any fees to do this?
Yes, so by subscribing to the project, you're purchasing the energy credits from Nexamp and applying those credits to the electricity bill, which then results in annual 10% savings.
On average, what is that?
Hold it now, you gotta speak slow for me. So, does community energy charge you anything to do this? So if I have a $100 electric bill, okay, you're saying I can get a 10% savings. So I save $10. Now does community energy take any of that money?
No, we work with the utility companies to do this. What our goal is to do a one bill, have it combined, so it's just already applied. I think that's gonna take a while, but that's our end goal. And we have made progress towards that. We have accomplished that in other states. New York, not so much. It's gonna be a slower process, but no, there's no charge for that. Community solar, that term is dictated by NYSERDA and is the program that this project fits into, but it's Nexamp Community Solar selling those credits.
Okay.
What does it usually cost to buy that credit?
I would have to speak to our community solar department because energy costs are very different if you go to different parts of the state. We have projects throughout the state, so it is different, but it is set up prior to, so the 10% on average, what I mean by that is in different areas and everything like that. Once we have a fully permitted project, once we're getting to that construction phase, we have it all dictated out for that exact locality. And so you had asked the question earlier of where's this energy going? Is it going to New York City or something like that in transmission lines? No, it's local energy. With that said, these credits can be sold anywhere within the zone, within the utility, but we work with the town. What we've done in other areas is set up priority subscriptions for the local town, then the county, and then if there's still energy to be sold, which is rare, because we typically have wait lists, then we can extend that boundary as well. So we're not the reason why I'm saying that is we're not in a situation where we can't sell the energy and it poses, to be an issue for the project.
Have you guys done any solar arrays in areas that were not already cleared for farming?
Yes, we've done them on all different type projects. One of my projects right now is on a landfill, so that's thankfully not used for farming, which I have a funny story about, but it's not used for farming. It will never be used for farming. We're doing, coming in right now and developing a solar array for that use. I think your question is coming from the point of cutting trees for solar.
Right.
We have cut some trees. We're very,
Some, but you've never cleared land, because I got the impression, like in Massachusetts, they basically make you clear the land and they don't take land out of agriculture to do these projects.
It's a tough balancing act, right? You've got agricultural land, prime farmland, you've got sensitive wetland areas, you've got forested areas, and kind of that all comes together to make these difficult to cite.
and we try not to clear sites to the maximum extent feasible. With that said, there's many published studies that document the trade-off for carbon emission for solar versus trees.
Right.
Well, thank you for your patience. I mean, a lot of our questions I don't think really pertain to what we're supposed to be looking at, but it helped educate us here. As I said earlier, we're not going to be able to make a decision tonight, so I guess I'm looking for a motion to table.
Yeah, you keep the public hearing open.
Yes.
We'll make a motion to table the public hearing.
I'll second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, so we'll probably see you next month, unless the Army Corps or the Seeker isn't done, which it should be.
It could be.
It could be, so.
Would you like us to still come in with, if you have any updates to the documents you guys for?
I can tell you, I will be here next month, I'll be at a conference in Buffalo
Okay.
for the
And
September.
if it's just, if it's just information, we can just submit it.
Okay.
And we'll, you don't have to appear if there's, if the secret process is still going on. But we can let you know.
Sounds good. Thanks for your time, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, good night.
And if you're interested, I do have my business card if anyone has any questions.
Okay, yes, please.
I saw different colors on that. I wanted to make sure I didn't hand out one that was.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Yes, you too. I never got this other one.
All right, Jim, we opened your public hearing and we put it on hold because you weren't here. See, we were gonna have you first, so you didn't have to hear all that, but now you got educated, so.
A couple months ago. Now this is
Here, if you wanna tell us what you're doing, I think we have a pretty good.
I do have a photo
One,
that,
here, 1 second. Jerry, there should be a worksheet in here. Oh, it's probably on the front, sorry, yep, okay, sorry. Well, here, Cliff, since you weren't here last month, I'll punish you. Give that to you that way. Sorry about it, okay, so you want to put a roof over a deck.
you got it.
Now let's put it back.
I'm sorry, yes. As I have over here.
Yep.
Okay.
That's all it is.
So you just gotta put a stoop underneath it?
The problem is it's too close to the road, right? You're still like 20 feet set, right?
Hang on, that would make it 27 feet.
He needs 8 feet of relief of front. And on Dog Creek, it's not.
The problem is it was such a small lot.
Right, it was
Just
another
to
one
get
of
the-
those
Corner
lots
Madison
that's
31,
expanded
right?
into one
Yeah.
bigger lot.
Plus it's on a corner, so it's got a double front.
Yeah, right.
And
It's a double front setback.
All I'm trying to do is.
there's another 8 feet from the boundary of the property to the edge of the road, so
Yeah.
can't even tell.
This house is between my house and one, something like that.
Alright.
It's not gonna have any sides or anything, just, well, or no sides at all, just.
Sure.
Just a-
Oh, this is the house that you're just building now, right on the corner.
Yep, yep.
It's like gray, if I remember right.
Blue, bluish gray.
Yeah.
Is he in the area that's own business or?
Drives by 50 times a week.
It's
Larry, is he his own business or is he past that? He's further east in the business district? No way.
Well, you may
I'm pretty sure that's business.
Oh, that's hysterical. One street.
You're one street too far west, or too far east.
So he's not in the business.
All those other houses are in the business district if they're on Route 31. He's the first one that's not. Just would have made it a little easier. So he's an MR12, so it's a 30 foot, and you're gonna be 22 feet from the road with that?
22 feet to the boundary. There's another 8 feet from the boundary to the road edge.
So are you saying more or less relief?
Well, to his property line, he's only 22 feet.
But he's saying
To
there's
the
8.
road, he's like 30 feet.
Okay. So he needs 8 feet of relief.
Right.
Alright.
But he still has 30 feet to the road.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
After I ask if there's anybody here to speak for or against it.
Fire away.
Okay. We have a motion to close the public hearing. Do we have a second? Any, any further discussion? All in favor of closing the public hearing, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. We're gonna talk about this in a minute here. You're more than welcome to stay, or you can call and find out what we decide in the morning. We should have this done in just a few minutes.
Alright. Alright, so I got type 2 negative declaration, factors to consider whether undesirable change would be produced in character of neighborhood or any detriment to nearby properties. I said, no, it's not a significant addition. Anybody, any other feedback on that? Whether the benefits sought by applicant can be achieved by a feasible alternative to the variance?
No.
No, I mean, what do you mean put for a reason?
It's the position of the house on the property.
It's a new house. I mean, he's just, he could have done something different, but
That's probably the best spot for it.
yeah, I mean, it's,
Any porch would require a variance. Cause I think the setback for the house is basically 30 feet,
yes,
so,
yes.
so any porch would require a variance, so it's not feasible to put one up without a variance, so that's part of it.
Okay, that's good. Whether the requested variance is substantial, I said no, it's 8 by 8.
Yeah, 8 feet of relief and 30 by 8
feet of relief.
28% relief.
Okay. would the variance have an adverse impact on the physical or environmental condition of the neighborhood? No. Other porches and decks. Whether the alleged difficulty was self-created? Yes. Alrighty, I would make a motion that the benefit of the applicant does outweigh the detriment to the neighborhood or community, and therefore, variance requested.
I'll second.
Reasons.
Okay, Terry seconds it. Do we have any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. Is it 10th? What's the date again?
The 11th.
The 11th, my wife's birthday.
Let's see, now, do we have, we don't have last month's minutes, but we have the minutes.
Let me ask you something, did we have a thing from the county on this one?
I was gonna read it, yes, well, on the solar one?
No. On the
Route 31.
Yes, and there was no impact.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the June minutes.
Do we have a second?
You wanna attest this?
I'm sorry.
Oh.
Do we have a second? Second, too.
Do you use the dictation of the recording only to draw the minutes, or does that get saved in a digital format of some kind and connected to the meeting?
It's saved on my computer, not digitally, it's just saved on my computer.
Permanently? Okay.
But the minutes go to John
We can
Leahy.
take a look
Right.
at this
They
and
went to
then give
Stacy,
it
and
to
then they
Mike.
went to John Leahy, and now they're back.
I was just curious if we ever ended up in litigation, if the verbatim recordings would be available for evidentiary purposes in the
I
act.
don't know about digitally, but they're on my computer.
If they're on your computer, they're digital. Yep. Perfect.
Steve, I'm not gonna hear this one, Dave. So, that's gonna create a problem. So we're gonna have to get some.
When you save them on your
I mean,
computer,
I'm on this board very much
do you
longer.
guys
I
have-
keep doing this. you
like
know.
a
Yeah,
town
well, that's what
server
I was talking to John.
where like Larry
He
can,
said
Larry,
that
you can
he's
share
on
files
his
back
board,
and forth on the
basically
drive?
has a rule, if you know
Are
you're
the
missing at least
recordings
3 a year,
saved
you
on
know,
that
you
drive,
better-
or are they
yeah,
on-
you better do
they're
something
just on your
different.
Yeah,
PC?
that's
You
why
should
I'm talking, but I don't wanna
probably-
be late either.
Right, yeah.
And
We're
last
on
month
the
was
server.
was a
Right,
mistake,
yeah,
but
there's
I
a-
have talked to
really
you
can't
about
save
the
anything on our
alternatives, even
machines.
before,
Okay, so it is saved on
Byron
the server.
left, you know, because I know I'm not gonna be here.
I know at the county, I can put stuff on my desktop,
Okay, yeah.
and it's just
Yeah,
on my
maybe I'll
desktop,
talk
and it
to
doesn't
John
get backed
about
up,
it.
it's not on the servers, it's
Yeah.
on my local machine. I can put a folder on my
I mean, if
desktop
you don't wanna
and
pay
put
me,
stuff
but
in it, and then
it's
it's
still not
only
gonna
on
be
my
any
machine,
good.
and
And
my
I'm
machine
sure
crashes or
if you
gets
have an
replaced,
alternate, well, maybe, but
it's
it's
gone.
just,
Yeah.
I can't, you know.
So as long as whatever it's in, it's.
Yeah, all of our
I'll get
PCs are
back to
backed
next
up
month,
on
and I
Good.
probably be a few months I won't, but then I will be again, so.
Excuse me, can I find out who seconded the minutes approval, please?
And I wasn't here, so I'm going to,
And all in favor of the minutes as written, signify by saying aye.
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 and I'll abstain.
Well,
Hold on,
actually, he
Luke,
was.
Luke cannot second the minutes.
He wasn't here.
Yeah.
I'll second them.
Oh, right, Steve.
So, all in favor of minutes as written, signify by saying aye.
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 You tried.
I was thinking it was July.
That makes
Next
sense.
time.
Sorry.
Here, I should have probably read it earlier, but this is what the county came back on the solar panel. The requested area variance is seeking complete area relief 1,000 feet from the town's recently enacted solar ordinance, which amongst other changes implemented a prohibition for the installation of solar farms within 1,000 feet of a wetland. It appears the applicant had a wetland delineation done on the property which identified a large area of wetland in and around the location of the planned solar array. In addition, our mapping also shows there are a number of national wetland inventory mapped wetlands that are also subject to the 1,000-foot buffer, but not shown on the applicant's maps. Thus, the relief sought is not only from the wetland directly on the project site, but from the wetlands surrounding the site as well. As a general rule, we would recommend against any development, solar array or otherwise, that directly impacts a wetland, not to mention the protected 1,000-foot buffer as defined by the town. There are likely many other areas in the town that would be suitable for such a solar development that wouldn't require a direct wetland impact or relief from the 1,000-foot setback. That said, the proposed area variance does not have a county-wide or intermunicipal impact and is therefore being returned for local determinations. Scott, is that correct? I should know this, but there are many different wetlands. There's DEC wetlands, federal wetlands, because I don't want to say I wouldn't consider that as a wetland there. You know, I mean, is it?
Well, it's
What?
There's no cattails growing, but yet it's
Yeah, it's still
Right.
there, it's
You
still
know,
mapped, so they're saying that's an Army Corps regulated wetland.
But a DEC wetland is a lot more,
Stringent.
what you would say is truly a wetland, where you got cattails
DEC.
and what type of soil is a wetland? I should know this. Oh, I can't remember the soil type.
I don't know how the DEC approaches the solar, but, you know, Nexamp saying is that Army Corps is more liberal with allowing construction.
That's why I wanted to review from them to
Within
see
the-
if that was true. How do we know it's, I mean, I guess they wouldn't go forward with it if they didn't think it was true, but if we give them the variance, they can say, well, see, they gave us a variance. I don't know. You
Well,
know.
and they said, you know, you could do a condition that, you know, it's conditioned upon obtaining a Army Corps permit for the construction. If they don't get the permit, then the project is built, so.
Because I mean, I farm a lot of wetlands that I would never know that was a wetland unless you look on a map and it says, hey, this is a wetland. And it's like, jeepers, this is one of my driest fields.
It's almost like
Right.
a floodplain too, you know, some of these areas, you know, they're overflow for the creeks. And
Right.
so yes, they're considered wetlands, but they're not wet all the time. I don't know, I'm just.
It probably has direct runoff into the
You know.
Cannon Creek right behind it.
Yeah, but
Chenango
Because I bet you it's right,
It's
it's
right
right
to
to
it.
it. However, it's pronounced.
that's why I feel like the
No.
Larry.
The other creek that's not
Larry's got
Chenango.
it.
Yeah.
Call the town boys to provide information.
Oh, that's literally right at the end of the street I live on.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. You ever remember giving them any type of relief, see Cliff sort of remember?
For something.
Saga?
If they did, it was before my time.
It could have been, that very well could have been.
So that would have been going way back.
Yeah.
I don't know what they would have gotten. I mean, I don't know how you guys operated at the time, if you guys would have given a use variance. I can't imagine you guys giving it, or not a use, I can't imagine you guys giving it would be a use variance to allow them to do,
For the horse, no.
to do the horse thing as a
I
business.
don't think it was. No, we never given the business for that.
Were they trying to do something in the barn? Or was it when they were building the barn?
Don't know. I remember a house being burned down there though years ago. But
They built on that, they built on the foundation.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the
Do we
meeting.
have a second?
second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.